Welcome to the e-commerce IP report.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the e-commerce IP report. Adam Urbanczyk is the principal attorney at AU LLC, a Chicago law firm focused on intellectual property litigation, e-commerce disputes, and helping businesses protect their brands in a rapidly evolving marketplace. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Adam and I are talking about how businesses protect their brand from online counterfeit sellers. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Sean. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you very much. How about you?
Keeping busy. There's a lot of activity as usual.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this kind of thing is maybe rampant, but I don't have an informed opinion. How common is online counterfeiting for businesses who are selling in a digital marketplace?
It's extremely common. I mean, you could look at customs data that's published on an annual basis, at least, that'll identify the losses suffered by businesses just in the United States as a result of fake products, and that could be counterfeit products, that is, capital C counterfeit products under the Lanham Act, or just fakes generally. So products that are ostensibly covered under a U.S. design or utility patent, or are just generally not authorized to exist the way that they do. They're sold using other rights holders' images, or they embody some copyright protectable character or something without authorization. So rather than like fakes or counterfeit products, the best term to talk about all of it is probably just unauthorized products.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. In various levels of sophistication and intent. What are some early signs that another seller may be offering counterfeit versions of a company's products online?
I suppose if a prototypical example might be a business that has a website, maybe they have a storefront on Amazon or eBay or some other marketplace, and in the course of advertising their products, they just come across other versions of it. If they don't have an active IP enforcement, like a service provider, or they're not really paying attention to it that much, they might just see a dip in sales. And when they dig into it, they can see on Amazon, for example, maybe some other seller is in their buy box, or they see, unfortunately, what a strategy that counterfeiters or pirates or those engaged in the activity, what they employ is, rather than trying to engage in a contest to see who might spend more on pay-per-click advertising or other like traditional forms of advertising to get their products above the threshold such that the average consumer is going to notice them. Often what happens is they will instead just create a number of different storefronts that are usually kind of ambiguously named. It's just a string of characters sometimes. And that way they kind of, they flood the marketplace, so to speak. Not necessarily with lots of fake products, but just venues or storefronts at which those products can be purchased. Even maybe each individual store may not be selling lots of a particular product. There's just so many of them that the genuine retailer can't get above the threshold. They can't get to the top of the list. So the customer is just assuming everything is legit and will buy the top one or the top two.
Yeah, it's just like a super broad net almost, it's like a law of numbers, or it's like, okay, well, a certain number of people are just going to fall into that store or that store or that store, and they're all sort of owned by the same operator. Interesting strategy.
Anyone who can go to Amazon or almost any marketplace or almost any website in this day and age, it's panic-inducing amount of information that is shoved at you immediately. If you spend time, you really look, you can tell. If you scroll down on the Amazon listing, you can see what the brand is identified as, or who the manufacturer might be, or what that product is actually sold, or who the product is actually sold by. But
yeah,
if we're on our phones, the phone is maybe 5 to 6 inches in diameter, diagonal. You're going to miss it. You just see the
Yeah.
product that looks okay. So then
Yeah.
one click buy now, and then there you go. That's how it happens.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's happened to me just for, in certain just innocuous ways where I'm like, wait, I thought I was buying that from, Dick's Sporting Goods, let's say, and it turns out it came from, some guy named Dick who was,
Yep.
who's just, selling used sporting goods. It's like, wait, what happened? Uh, Usually I was in too much of a hurry. But yeah, you're right. There's so much fine print. Um, what about, beyond just lost sales, what kind of damage can counterfeit sellers cause to a business, and its reputation even?
It can hurt the brand insofar as a potential customer who is looking for a product, if they get the impression that the particular brand is being knocked off very very casual, maybe not casually, but often, that might make the potential customer wary about shopping around. I mean, they may not want to spend the time to ensure that they're getting the authentic one, um, in some sense.
Yeah.
So they, rather than trying to find a particular brand of something that isn't like a particular target, like, there are some brands are, at some threshold, brands are, they get sufficiently popular such that them being knocked off or unauthorized versions of them being produced and sold is an indicator that, well, I guess your sale, you have enough of a commercial footprint that there is a motivation to rip the brand off.
Yeah.
Uh, like Rolex is a great example. There is probably a multi-billion-dollar industry of just fake Rolexes,
Oh yeah.
and that's just because Rolex, the brand, is hugely powerful, and people, they're very desirable pieces generally, right?
Hmm.
Um, but for smaller brands, it might, if for smaller brands and for products that aren't so particularly desirable, whereas the consumer isn't thinking, I really want this brand of something. They just
Yeah.
want a something, and they hope it's produced by some brand that isn't selling me something that's toxic or is going to kill me. Then I'll go find this. But if that there isn't a sensitivity there, and it's just, the fungible purchases, it's not important. If they see a particular brand is getting ripped off all over the place, they might not want to have to deal with it at all. It's like,
Right.
I was going to buy this, but there's 10 different versions. It's sold by 13 different sellers. I don't know what's authentic and what's not. I'm just going to go to the other one and not have to worry about it. If it's not an important purchase,
Right.
if I'm not buying a Rolex, I'm going to pay attention that I'm going to go to the authorized dealer or some reputable, marketplace or something. But for many things that are purchased, for most things that are purchased online, finding the actual branded version of it might not be as important. It's more about
Yeah.
finding the best price, and
Yeah.
that's where
Good
you need
enough
to.
is good enough is good enough, or you'll try it once. You'll try some knockoff, so to speak, and be like, not as good. Sometimes that happens, I think.
It'll
Um,
come down to law. I mean, ultimately, it's the problem is potential customers aren't buying your authentic product
yeah.
for a number of related reasons. That's the ultimate problem.
Hmm.
The corrosion of the brand is the result of the corrosion of the brand is that people just start buying your products that are branded as such.
Hmm.
So there could be an initial loss of sales because there are unauthorized versions out there, and then, like, in the long run, other products that might be under the same brand may become less desirable because of an issue with um, a particular product being knocked off.
Yeah. 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 Where's it happening most? Like, where do businesses most often encounter uh, counterfeit sellers today?
Well, online, I think, the barrier to entry to anybody can throw up,
Right.
anybody with I guess an ID and maybe a
Mm.
bank account can throw up a storefront and source products from somewhere and engage in drop shipment. It's
Yeah.
been Amazon, eBay, Temu, some of these other marketplaces it's been a great democratization of uh, the seller economy,
Yeah.
maybe,
Retail.
for better and for worse. Anybody can
Yeah.
do it, so that there's just that's where the issue is going to come up first and foremost. Other than that, I mean, you're down to uh, the fake Gucci bags on a street corner in New
Yeah.
York City or something like that. I mean, you'll run into there, and then there are other versions of that in different parts of the country. It's certainly not limited to New York City, but the products will come in and they'll be sold out of a warehouse or a truck or um, public storage facility sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but first and foremost, because the barrier to entry in opening up an e-commerce store is the lowest, you're going to see that being like the the 80% of the problem is probably in e-commerce.
Got it. And what and so you find out, you discover, that someone's doing this, they're ripping you off in some way. What legal options do businesses have, once they've discovered that, counterfeit versions of their product are being sold online?
Well, there are legal, administrative, practical options, legal options, administrative options that
Mm,
are sort of interrelated. If you're a brand owner and you see that there are say two storefronts that are selling some bogus version of your product. It's branded. It's not authentic. You're confident of that based on what it looks like in the image and what the price point is, for example. Um, do you have to run to court and sue those two?
mm,
Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the initial the initial response is a platform complaint. Maybe you're raising a trademark dispute on the platform itself. It's like an administrative remedy, sort of.
mhm.
Um, Maybe it's a DMCA notification. Those will be addressed and handled much more quickly than a lawsuit will. Um, at some threshold, if you're facing if there's a swarm of sellers who are selling unauthorized products, and it really isn't either it isn't something that platform complaints would likely take care of in bulk, and or the volume of what they're doing meets some threshold that might result in litigation, then perhaps the platform complaint isn't the first thing to do. Maybe it's you consulting an attorney, conducting an investigation, and then trying to get some relief through the court system. Because at least at least in e-commerce, much of the activity is occurring from sellers who are based overseas,
Oh,
and
okay.
to where funds from the unauthorized, purchases or unauthorized product purchases are sending back to. They're going to be not uh, not judgment proof exactly. The prospect of getting a relief against them is can be challenging. There are processes by which you can domesticate U.S. judgments in foreign countries, but that's another step that the average brand owner litigant in the United States may not be in the position to take, at least not anytime soon.
Sure.
So the leverage you have over at least e-commerce sellers generally is going to be the extent to which you can restrain their activities and the funds associated with those activities that are located here in the U.S.
Mhm.
Or are held by entities that are reachable by a U.S. judgment. Um, so you could stop it that way. Um, if it looks like there is just a mistake, or there is, for example, a US like a US based seller, you can confirm that there is some distributor here in the US that is just mistaken. You can always send a cease and desist letter and try to negotiate the negotiate the resolution of that type of dispute. Often there are just misunderstandings, and
Yeah.
litigation is going to be the last resort, but under certain circumstances, the last resort winds up being the first resort at the same time. It winds up being the same activity.
Yeah. Does timing matter? Does speed matter? Like, how quickly should a business act after, making that discovery that, somebody's selling counterfeit stuff?
Well, the sooner the better. I suppose what you want to avoid, if you're a seller and you see somebody selling unauthorized versions of your products, if you're a brand owner and you see somebody selling unauthorized versions of your products, on Tuesday morning, do you have to file a lawsuit on Wednesday? No. Um, there will be some time that you need to investigate the matter, perhaps
Mm-hmm.
conduct some test purchase to make sure the products are in fact and authentic. There's lots of gray market activity that isn't necessarily counterfeit. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but at a minimum, you don't want to wait too long for a couple of reasons. One, if it's damaging your brand, you want to stop that
Right.
sooner rather than later. And then two, if you wait too long, that can work to defeat an argument you would raise in litigation that what is transpiring is creating some irreparable harm. So if you see some
Yeah.
activity and then you wait a year and a half to
How
file a
bad could it
lawsuit,
get
well,
bad?
I mean, there may not be a statute of limitations problem, or maybe even like a latches problem to your claims. If you ask the court for a preliminary injunctive relief, or to enter a temporary restraining order because what's going on is so serious, you need this extraordinary remedy, the court might say, like, well, if it was that bad, why did you wait?
Yeah.
More or less, like, why did you wait this long?
Yeah.
And there are examples of that relief being denied because a rights holder waited too long.
Hmm.
How long is too long? I think it's going to depend under the circumstances, like most things. But I mean, you probably want to do something within 3 months.
Yeah. That makes
The
sense.
sooner the better.
Yeah, you're gonna do some sniffing around and figuring out who's who and what's what. Take a few weeks. What about real world example? I mean, I'm sure in your practice, I mean, you're dealing with this all the time, of course, Adam. But is there a situation where a business discovered counterfeit sellers, and then you could describe like what steps did they take to protect their brand?
I mean, we've had examples where um, we had clients. We have a client that has a, a reasonably sized intellectual property portfolio. They sell products, say like a skincare um, segment, and they noticed that um, there were other versions of their products being sold online, and they weren't necessarily um, they weren't necessarily inauthentic. They just weren't authorized to be sold in the United States.
Ah,
So
okay.
the step one would be, well, let's get the scope of the offending activity. So
Yeah,
you
somebody's
look through
rerouting.
the offending, you looked at the offender's business, what they're selling, obtain some evidence, get some evidence. You're taking screenshots,
Yeah.
you'd be conducting some test purchases, making sure that what is being represented on the screen is what is being sold. If there's a difference there, that's a separate problem. To basically make, qualify the nature of your claims. And then if, if if it doesn't look like it's a foreign seller problem, we would send a cease and desist letter, basically laying out the case in form of a letter. Maybe it's 4 pages long with exhibits like, here's what you're looking at. This is, we represent this rights holder. This is the nature of our client's rights. Here's what we found out. This is the basis for the claims. These are the remedies you're potentially facing. Here's a list of demands, including, give us all the sales records you have of all these products or anything else that's related
Mhm.
there too. Um, you know, Litigation holds and all of that, and then wait to see if they come back to you. Sometimes, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Usually, I think that they do. If it's at some point, if the person, if the entity on the receiving end of the demand is sufficiently large, they will have counsel either in house, or they will have an attorney who has helped them conduct their business, and then you'll receive a response from them, and maybe it's resolved, maybe it's not. In this case, it wasn't, so we sent follow up letter that wasn't responded to, and then we wound up opening a case that got everyone's attention, and then that will lead to additional discussions, and then potentially resolve the matter. Or if there isn't a resolution, then we just proceed to litigation. So
Mhm.
um, that's kind of typical.
Okay.
I think most of the time, a rights holder, after having an attorney send a cease and desist letter, you should get a response. But that's not always the case. Sometimes the organization isn't very tightly wound, and correspondence like that just goes away. There's no shortage of letters that are sent that are ostensibly legal in nature, but are just spam. And often the substance of the letter isn't taken seriously, for better or for worse. So that can result in some discommunication of a rights holder's claims. But ultimately, I think the litigation aspect is going to be the last resort. I mean, most intellectual property infringement disputes writ large can be resolved through some form of negotiation, and then it's a matter of like, well, what is it worth to the parties to actually not have to go to the next step? And most of the time that can be worked out. Sometimes it can't, and that's why the courts are there.
Are there mistakes that people commonly make that causes a problem? You know what I mean? In terms of trying to stop the activity, the illegal activity? Are there things you shouldn't do, I guess?
Waiting too long to address the matter is probably the number one problem, because the nature of the conduct tends to breed. If you're vigilant over what's going on with your trademarks and your patents and your copyrights and the products being sold thereunder in e-commerce marketplaces, and you're quick to stamp them out, I guess communities that are interested in producing or selling inauthentic versions of those will see that resistance, and they may move off to something else. But if you're a rights holder and you're asleep at the wheel somewhat, they will, there are actors who will take advantage of that. So if you wait too long, the problem will grow. There's some, logarithmic measure of the type of damage that can occur as more and more sellers are seeing that you're not actually enforcing any of your rights. And as time goes on, there are more and more tools available for whether they're platform tools or otherwise. There are other activities rights owners can engage in, whether they're platform complaints or arbitration, negotiation, whatever, that will help stamp that out. So I don't think a rights holder isn't making a mistake by addressing the matter properly. Whatever, and even stepping back, prefacing that, ensuring that your rights are secured in the form of a trademark registration, ideally on the principal register. If you have securing your invention under a U.S. utility or design patent design, if you have creative works, you want to secure them under U.S. copyright registrations. If you don't have those, and maybe we've been assuming throughout the course of this conversation that the rights holders' rights are all secured in these things with the U.S. federal government. That's been going without saying, and maybe we should back up and step 0 is to make sure that whatever rights you purport to have are secured with the U.S. federal government in the form of a trademark registration or a U.S. patent of some kind, or a copyright registration. That's going to be very important. Not only because doing that is going to allow you to bring a claim in the first place in federal court. It's going to give you additional remedies in U.S. Federal courts, and then the platforms are going to be honoring complaints about those things a bit more readily. You generally don't want to be arguing with the platform over your common law rights to some unregistered trademark, and then they don't want to hear it. They're going to defer to what the U.S. federal government has already acknowledged as your exclusive rights. That is your trademark registration, your patent, or your copyright registration. That's what they want to see. So that maybe that's problem number one would be not securing your rights in the first place.
Yeah, that ground zero advice before you go selling your stuff online. Make sure you've got your rights sewn up, federally and such. Adam, thank you so much. We're out of time for this particular episode, but always informative. Thanks for sharing your expertise, and I look forward to connecting on a future episode.
Likewise. Thanks, Sean.
That's it for this episode of the E-commerce IP Report. To learn more about Adam Urbanczyk, visit the website AU-LLC.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like, subscribe to the show, or share a link to this episode with someone who might be interested in this topic. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.